Hi guys, today we're doing section 11.7, which is integer operations. And so we're going to take everything we've learned so far in this chapter and put it now all together. So adding, subtracting, multiplying, dividing integers, positive and negatives, so that we can get one simplified answer. Now to do this, we have to make sure that we follow the order of operations, okay? This is going to tell us the correct order in which to get the answer so that it will actually be correct. Okay, so remember, we have to do all the operations that are inside the grouping symbols. So the grouping symbols are your parentheses, your brackets, and remember, it's your absolute value signs. Okay, then we go and do our multiplication and division. Now, if we have multiplication and division together, remember, we always have to go left to right. And then that leaves us our addition and subtraction. And remember, the same thing like multiplication and division, if we have it all happening on the same line, we have to go left to right. Okay, guys, so let's go ahead and let's get into some problems here. Okay, so the first one, let's go ahead and we're going to work on the left side. I've done these already so that we can follow them along. You've got them in your notes. So let's just talk through them here, okay? So here we have for problem number 1, we have 18 minus 12 divided by a negative 4. Remember, our order of operations says that we have to do division and multiplication first before subtraction. So I'm going to do 18 and bring down the subtraction sign. Now I'm going to do the division. 12 divided by a negative 4 gives me a negative 3. Okay, now I'm going to take the next step of order of operation, and I'm going to bring down my 18. Remember, two negatives side by side without any number in between means it's going to turn to a positive. So my final answer for this problem is going to be 21. Looking at this next problem here, we have parentheses, addition inside the parentheses, and then division. So our order of operations says we always have to do the inside of our parentheses first. So we're going to add negative 6 plus a positive 2. Take the big, subtract the little, so 6 minus 2 is 4. Use the sign of the bigger number, which is negative 4. And then my last step is to now divide by 4. So 4 divided by 4 is 1. How many negative signs do I have? I have 1, so my answer is negative 1. Looking at problem number 5 here, we have multiplication and division. Okay, our order of operations says I have to go from left to right. Okay, so I need to first start out with 36 divided by 6, and they're both negatives. So remember the rule, if I divide them both by the same sign, the answer has to be positive, and 36 divided by 6 is 6. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the multiplication by 2, which gives me my final answer of 12. Now we're going to look at problem 7. Problem 7 puts a lot more stuff here together, and so we need to take it step by step. So our first thing is our grouping. So I have to do my parentheses here. So I need to find out what my exponent here is going to be. It's in parentheses, so 7 minus 5 is 2. Okay, then I'm going to work with what's over here on this side, and I've got to do parentheses here. So 5 plus 1 is 6. Okay, now the next thing that I'm going to do is figure out my exponents. So 4 squared is 16. Now work with my fraction here. 7 times 6 is 42. And then down here in the denominator, we forgot to talk about that. We had the absolute value of 6 minus 9. Now 6 minus 9 was a negative 3, but we had to take the absolute value of it, and the absolute value of a negative 3 is a positive 3. So now what we have to do is the division before we can do the addition. So 42 divided by 3, I get 14. And now the last step, I can go ahead and add them. So with these types of problems, there are multiple steps. But remember, if we follow the order of operation, we will have no problem as long as we do our arithmetic correctly. Okay, let's do number 9. Number 9 is a little bit more busy here. So first thing I have to do is my grouping. And I see two things of grouping here. I have an absolute value sign and I have square roots. So let's start with this one. I've got 3 minus 5, or 3 plus a negative 5, and I get a negative 2. Once I take the absolute value of the negative 2, I know it's 5 squared. Okay, let's do our grouping over here. I need to figure out what's underneath my square root sign. So I'm going to take 4 squared, which is 16, subtract 7. Simplify everything here again, and so I end up with a square root of 9. Okay, now looking at what we have, I need to find what the square of the 5 is, which is 25. Take the square root of my 9, which is 3. Now my very last step is to subtract them. And so I get answer of 22. Okay, let's go back and we'll do the problems on the right side. And let's see if you can get the same answers that I get here. So looking at our order of operation, the very first thing we have to do is our parentheses. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead. Here's my subtract 6. Bring down my plus. Now I got to do what's inside the parentheses, and I end up with 5. And then I have times a negative 3. Okay, now order of operations says I have to do the multiplication first before I can do the addition. So this negative 6 gets brought down, and now I'm going to do my multiplication. 5 times a negative 3 gives me a negative 15. Okay, so now I'm going to add the negative 6 plus the negative 15. They're both the same numbers, so remember our rule says if they're both negatives, add them up. So 15 plus 6 is 21, and I need to use the sign of the numbers, and I have negative 21 as my answer. Okay, let's go ahead and do this one. This is the first time we've seen brackets. Okay, brackets, we're going to treat them just like parentheses here. So we're going to leave this 36 till later, and I'm working now with my brackets. And the brackets say I need to do what's inside of it. So I've got a negative 3 plus a negative 6. Same sign, so I add them together, and I get a negative 9. Now I have my times 2. Order of operations says I have to do multiplication and division first, but if you notice, we have both of them. So the rule says now I need to go from left to right. So 36 divided by 9, a negative 9, gives me 4, because 4 times 9 is 36. I have one negative sign, so it's negative 4. And now I do my multiplication, and that gives me an answer of negative 8. Okay. Continuing on, let's look at problem number 6. Okay, problem number 6. I have addition, multiplication, and division. So order of operations says this addition has to be last. So now I'm going to do multiplication and then my division because it's from left to right. So 3 times 6 is 18, and then I'll divide it by the negative 2. So the 27 still has to hang out here a minute. And now let's do our division. 18 divided by 2 is 9. And I've got one negative sign, so my answer is a negative 9 here. Now I can go ahead and add. So I've got 27 plus a negative 9. So opposite signs. So I'm going to take the big number, subtract the little number. So 27 minus 9 gives me 18. And the sign of the bigger number is positive, so my answer is going to be a positive 18. Okay, so let's go on to this one. We've got a couple bigger problems here, and then we'll be done for the day. So looking at this here, there's a lot going on. Don't freak out about it. Let's take it step by step and do our grouping first. Okay, so our first grouping thing is underneath our square root sign. So let's simplify what's under the square root. So I've got 5 squared, which is 25. And I've got 3 squared, which is 9. Okay, now we got to do what's inside this parentheses, and I end up with a negative 6. We're going to continue on, and now we got absolute value signs. And so I'm going to take the absolute value eventually here, but let's do our numbers inside. So I've got 8 plus a negative 10, which gives me a negative 2. Okay, so let's keep simplifying this. 25 minus 9 gives me the square root of 16. I still have this negative 6. And now I'm going to take the absolute value of that negative 2, which gives me a positive 2. Okay, so this is addition, this is division, so I'm going to have to work with this first. But let's continue simplifying this. The square root of 16 is 4. Now we're going to do our division. A negative 6 divided by 2 is 3. And I only have one negative sign, so that's a negative 3. Add these together, and my final answer is a positive 1. Okay? The last example here we're going to do is this one here. Okay, go ahead first and let's see what our grouping symbols are going to be. I've got multiplication, I've got absolute value signs, division, and then an addition of a fraction. So don't let that scare you. So let's go ahead and work with the absolute value here. Okay, so in my absolute value, I have a subtraction and addition. So I've got to go left to right here. So 1 minus a 7, or we can think of it as 1 plus a negative 7, gives me negative 6. Then I have my addition of 4. Okay, I'm just going to write this so it's nice and neat so we can figure out where to go next. So the next thing is, let's finish our absolute value. So I've got negative 6 plus a 4. That answer is going to be a negative 2. Now, if I take the absolute value of a negative 2, I'm going to get the answer of a positive 2. So I end up with 2 over 12. Now I have my addition of 1/2. Okay, so what comes next? What comes next is our multiplication. Now, we're going to go ahead and put a 1 underneath this whole number 3 to help us. Now, before we do our multiplication, let's simplify things to make it easier on us. So 3 goes into 12 4 times. So to multiply this, I go 1 times 2 and I get 2. 1 times 4 is 4. And then I have 1/2 that I still have to add. Okay, to make this easier for us, let's reduce this fraction. And I get 1/2. And then here's my other 1/2 I have to add together. What's 1/2 plus 1/2? My final answer is 1. Okay, guys, so some of these problems look very overwhelming. But with our rules of order operation, it helps us break it down into parts that are very straightforward and easy to manage. So don't forget to follow your order of operations for this. Okay, if you get stuck, go ahead and email me or text me, and you will be doing this for 2 days now. Have a good day.